Yo, what's up? This is Splendid Radio on Farside TV with my co-host Jeremy Scipio.
What's going on, people?
Yeah, and a very I always say people are dear to my heart, man. But when I know him, but Paul is a good dude, man. He's really a good dude. I met him like I met a lot of people through my marriage with the Far Side, and he was I was something that came along with the package, and he was something that came along with the package, and I always kind of made it my business to uh always be cool with whoever the Far Side worked with. You know what I'm saying? Just on a whole nother level, just create a personal relationship. Because I was, at that time I wasn't managing the group. It was nothing like that. I was just like the homie hanging around. And I was just kind of fascinated by these people they would have around them. Not necessarily like artists or stars or nothing like that, but Paul was one of these guys that he was like a Pro Tools guru. Like he like how everybody kind of uses these little applications and doohickeys and little whatever they run stuff through to get quick little mixes and whatnot. Paul was the dude that would be at the big board, you know what I'm saying, working all those those automated fades and all that kind of stuff. And that was amazing to me at the time. And so we did develop a relationship. So with all that being said, we have Paul Arnold in the house on Splendid Radio, everybody? On Farside TV. And real quick, so we'll get further into who Paul's worked with, but a funny little story. I never do social media hustling. Like I never like to look at social media and see if somebody's in town or out of town or who they working with or this, that, and the third. But there was a time that I looked up and I saw Paul was working with Anita Baker, and I was like, "Yo, man, Paul, why don't you run her by the studio, man?" And he just kind of played it off like, "Yeah, like, yeah, man, we need to get her in the studio with Brown, man. We make some magic happen." But man, I'm so glad that I have you on the show because you have been around a lot of interesting things in music. And it's just kind of amazing. People really don't know your story. Like you've kind of done it all. You kind of done it all, and you are like one of the last. I'm not gonna say like, I don't want to say dinosaur, like whatever, but like a dude, but like a dude who really knows. No, but a dude who really knows how to work Pro Tools and all that stuff. Like man, he didn't. Paul comes from a school of not skipping the you come from a school, Paul, of where you had to know it to do it. There was no in between. There wasn't no faking it. You had to get in front of this big, huge board and make magic happen. And that's how you made your living to date, to date. So with the podcast, basically we talk about hip hop. Jeremy's a comedian. We talk a little bit about, he'll bring his comedic lightness into it. And then we try to ask some really good questions. I try to interview people from a perspective of not what everybody knows that they're famous for, but more or less their process. So since you've been around doing this music thing for a while, where were you the first time you heard hip hop, and what was the song?
Well, I was working in Boston. I was living in Boston. I was going to a music school there, specific music college, Berklee College of Music, and nearby, a couple of blocks away from our campus, was the campus of Northeastern University, and Northeastern had a very, very progressive radio station. It was like the best college radio station I'd ever heard. And also not too far away was another station from Emerson College, and then another one over at Boston University. So all these stations were kind of, right on the cutting edge of everything that was happening. Mm-hmm. So I go back to like when this whole hip hop thing was kind of, first coming on. And, I was there as it was kind of being, cultivated. And Boston being kind of in proximity of New York, a lot of guys in Boston kind of felt they were like just northern New Yorkers. And of course, New York was where everything was, really being cultivated. So there was a little bit of like, maybe a rivalry, not a hostile rivalry, but, we were kind of following what was going on in New York, but we also, had our own flavor that we were putting on it. So the first actual hip hop record, it would be hard for me to say what was the very first one, but I'll tell you the first time I heard a record that, kind of had an impact on me. And, corny as it may sound, it was Rapper's Delight.
Yeah.
And the reason
I think it's the number one answer right now.
The reason that had such an impact was not only was, did it wind up eventually being mainstream and, kind of introducing the world to this thing that had been, bubbling already for, maybe a handful of years. We heard it early. We heard it like real early, again, because these radio stations were just so progressive. And behind that one, I think another one that I heard kind of early for me, and the jock on the radio was good because he was kind of breaking it down how the whole record was created, was Buffalo Gals. Mm-hmm. And Buffalo Gals, there was some cutting on there was some scratching on there was some drum machine or whatever, and this jock just really explained really well how all the elements came together. I was like, oh yeah, it's pretty interesting. But the studio where I was working at the time was kind of a budget friendly place. So we got a lot of people, would come in and experiment. And like I said, guys were really just kind of figuring it out. So we had a couple of drum machines up there. I learned how to work those, so I could program drums. But, guys would come in and bring their turntable.
When was this?
When?
Yeah.
I'd say maybe 83.
And you feel like that's the first time you felt like you had a passion for music?
Oh, no. I've been in the music thing, man, since the early days of like the Beatles and James Brown and all that. I'm an old guy. I'm an old guy. I got bitten by the music bug like way early on, man. Back in the like late 60s, I already knew that, that was going to kind of be my thing. Mm-hmm. But the hip hop thing, it really, early 80s, early to mid 80s, that's when I really, kind of became awakened to the movement, what was going on, and luckily got to participate in what was happening as a studio engineer.
What city did you grow up in?
Oh man, I grew up in a little college town in Indiana, where the University of Notre Dame is located, South Bend, Indiana. And later on down the line, man, as I was doing sessions with the Pharcyde or whatever, man. It would strike me as funny sometimes as this, kind of nerdy kid from Indiana, used to sit down in his basement and listen to records and everything. And now to be like, working with the likes of the Pharcyde and the Tupacs and the whoever, I was like, man, I done came a long way.
What was your, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying there wasn't a whole lot of progressive music happening back in Indiana at the time. I mean, we had the Jacksons. Like when people heard, "Oh, you from Indiana?" That was the next question they would ask. Well, how far from the Jacksons? How far from
yeah.
And then I got a cousin in Indianapolis, and that was about the extent of the conversation you could have about Indiana.
Yeah, I just rode through there like last month.
Oh man,
yeah, that's it. Yeah. You said what?
I'm sorry. I'm glad you rode through.
literally rode through from Chicago to where we go? Yeah, we get to Ohio. Yeah. Straight through. Yeah. What would you feel like your first interaction as a teenager working with music?
As a teenager working with music, I did the whole basement, band thing. My best friend was a bass player. Also a guitar player, but bass is what he really loved. And I played drums. So we sat up down in mom and dad's basement and, just knocked out music with, our little band, a little 2-piece band or whatever. But we were really into all kinds of music. There was a movement in kind of the jazz fusion, they called it, music scene, where you had guys who were playing jazz music, but kind of like with a rock edge and with a funk edge. And so we were really, really excited about that music, and that's what we kind of tried to mimic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that, because I was speaking to somebody and we were talking about, it might have been Matt during the last the guest we had last week.
Mm-hmm.
And I was making the comparison that, whether it was spoken or not, Jimi Hendrix was influenced a lot by Miles Davis.
Definitely.
With that whole, like, and you wouldn't make the compare, but when you listen to it, mm-hmm. and Jimmy creating a total, I won't call what Jimi Hendrix did a sound. I'll say he created a genre or a subgenre of rock and roll off of feedback. Yeah. I mean, it was the wah wah too, but mm-hmm. it was really that whole feedback thing. And Miles had went through his situation where he was dealing with the wah wah, and he was and like doing really creative stuff with sound.
You're right.
Right. So when you were in high school, mm-hmm. what did you think your path would be after you graduated?
Oh man, that's a good question, which kind of ties into my introduction to the Pharcyde, man. Believe it or not. Now that sounds like a wide stretch, and it is. But when I was in high school, man, one of my passions was golf. All right, I grew up near a golf course. Dad had some clubs in the garage, he didn't use or whatever. So I picked them up, kind of taught myself how to play. And that's how I passed a lot of time, was over on the golf course. Started playing on the golf team in high school. And there was a kid who was on our team, a couple years younger than me, but he was so much better than everybody else, okay? He's what we now define as an outlier. Frank, I don't know if you're watching, man, but I've shared this story with you, but Frank was so much better than everybody else. It was clear, that he just had an exceptional gift that we didn't have. And I asked him one day, I was like, so what are you going to do, man? Are you going to, like, try to be a professional golfer at some point? And he looked at me like, well, yeah. I mean, it was just, like, that's a dumb question. Of course I am. You don't see, my skills. But anyway, it got me to thinking, man, like, man, am I good at anything like that? Am I good at music the way he's good at golf? And I said, well, I don't know if I'm that good, but I'm going to get that good. And I'm going to do whatever I can do in this music thing to make music my profession. And so that's why I made a decision to go to a dedicated music school like Berkeley, and study the craft, not only the engineering technical side, because that kind of came later. My plan was to be a studio musician, a drummer, and maybe a producer. Mm-hmm. And then I just kind of fell into the audio engineering thing as a kind of a side thing.
Real quick, we have a because it's streamed live to YouTube, we actually have like a comment section, like people chime in and stuff. And
cool.
You've actually been getting questions like already.
Can I interrupt you? I hate to do that to you, man.
Go ahead.
I hate to do that to you.
Okay.
Forgive me. But I had to put that together with the Pharcyde, okay? Because here's a guy in Indiana who's out there playing golf. How in the world does that lead to me and the Pharcyde? Well,
absolutely.
There's a man named Mike Ross who had a record label called Delicious Vinyl. You may have heard of it. And Mike was an avid golfer. So I met Mike at a golf tournament. And he found out, that I was an engineer and I'd worked with some people. And he approached me and said, hey, man, I got this group, the Pharcyde. You familiar with them? I'm like, yeah, I know who they are. He's like, man, we've been trying to find an engineer that they like to help mix their album. You want to take a shot at it? I said, absolutely. So that's how I wound up meeting Greg and the rest of the crew, was through this introduction from Mike Ross, who I met on a golf course. So if you want to meet record industry people, learn how to play golf.
Yeah, that's huge. That's like a lot of big business go down on a golf course.
It really does, man. I mean, at that particular tournament, the movers and the shakers at that tournament was just, huge. There was everybody from the industry, the presidents of labels and everything were there. And then I was there. Mm-hmm. And then there were, the big shot attorneys, everything. And then I was there. So I got to, meet a whole lot of people and made some good connections through just that one tournament. Yeah. Anyway, you said there might be some questions.
Yes, one of the people asked, how'd you go from Indy to Boston?
That was going to the music school there, Berklee College of Music. Okay. So instead of going to a traditional college, I decided to go there because I wanted to hone my craft.
Okay.
Boston was a great city at that time, man, because there were so many different elements bubbling at the same time. Again, this whole movement in hip hop was just kind of getting started and whatever. There was still a funk scene there. There was a reggae scene. It was kind of the days of punk music and new wave. They call it, groups.
Yeah.
All this stuff was kind of blending together, and because it was a big college town, people were coming from all over the world, all over the country, bringing in their different influences and styles of music they liked, and it all just kind of blended together. It was really interesting.
How'd you end up mixing and mastering?
Well, the way that happened was I was going to school at Berklee and had made friends with a couple of guys there, and we formed a band. We started playing around Boston in some of the clubs and whatever. And right up the street, a block away from our dorm, literally, there was this little studio called Newberry Sound. And Newberry Sound had a deal in the middle of the night. If you went in there from midnight till like 5 or 6 in the morning, it was only like $15 an hour to go in there and record. So we would kind of pool our money together and go up there and cut records. We thought we were like, you could tell us nothing, man. We was up in there, thought we were Quincy Jones and whatnot. And at school, I had kind of started taking some of the audio engineering courses because I felt that if I wanted to be in the studio all the time, I wanted to be able to communicate in the right terms. Like instead of saying, "Man, I want to hit harder," or can you make it sound more orange, or I want to be able to say, it needs more compression. Can you use some EQ? That kind of thing. Anyway, there was a gentleman that owned and ran that studio. His name was Ken Canavas. And he was a little overworked. He's trying to do the whole thing. And when I showed up there, we started recording and whatnot. I eventually asked if I could just go ahead and engineer some of the sessions. And the guys in the band trusted me. It turns out, Ken looked over my shoulder, and I'd been looking over his shoulder for so long. He kind of trusted me, gotten to know me. And he said, "Yeah, man, go ahead, do it." So once I'd gotten a couple of sessions under my belt, he figured, okay, well, now he didn't have to be there from midnight till 5 in the morning. He could just leave me there. And then one day he turned to me, he was like, I really, really appreciate you, being around here. Do you think you could do a couple of sessions for me, during the daytime, just the regular clients? I was like, well, yeah, because I was working at a music store back in the day at that time. And, wasn't getting paid much money or whatever. And he offered me money like that I thought was just incredible. So I was like, yeah, man, I'll do that. That's great. It's what I wanted to do anyway. And so once he figured out, again, that I could be trusted and I knew what I was doing, and the clients, liked my work, that he just kept feeding me work, man. He just kept feeding me that work. And that was one of the ways I was able to, kind of get up to speed at an accelerated pace. So I really owe a lot to Ken for getting me into this thing, but that's how I kind of made the transition.
What was the technology before Pro Tools?
Oh, well, we were recording on tape.
Oh, so, and just rewinding back and just cutting it. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what, once we kind of started working with Pro Tools, and it's nothing for me to do edits and stuff like that, because we used to have to do that with a razor blade and splicing tape, and it was a lot more complicated to make a record back then when you were using tape and analog equipment and whatnot. It was a much more specialized profession, much more specialized career than it is right now. Not saying that anybody could do it, but it's certainly a whole lot more accessible these days. Anybody with a computer and a microphone, whatever, you can make music right there in your bedroom. Back then, the equipment was so specific and so expensive. And they're even, size, like Greg was saying, you got these big consoles, a big, tape machine. You had to have a specific room to put that in. And, we were recording live musicians or, bands or whatever that were playing together. So you had to have an acoustic space, a properly treated acoustic space, big enough, for 4 or 5 people to get in there, throw their headphones on, and start grooving together. So, we were using tape, man, analog stuff, good times.
And before I knew, because kind of being ushered into this whole music thing by the Pharcyde, like me going back to my recollections of you, I never really knew what a dope mix was or a whack mix was. I mean, I really wasn't around for that. I was just like the homeboy, like kind of like the hanger honor. But one of the things that was kind of fascinating to me is just watching you work those huge boards. And like literally you would work the board. Like it wasn't, some people can get in front of a big board and they kind of, who knows and who doesn't know, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But you really worked the board and you took the time. And I just remember sometimes when you were mixing a song or mastering a song, you just be there for days and just for hours and just going over the same thing and just over and over. And then having to deal with Imani, Brown, Trey, Lip on separate, because sometimes they were in the studio together, but then other times I just kind of used to like to hang out. Like I mean, that was just my kind of a place that I could come. That was I think maybe my mom had passed like a little bit after that. My mom had passed a little bit before I met you. And then it was kind of like, well, I could just kick it at the studio. You know what I'm saying? So I remember just saying, man, it takes a lot of, you have to have a lot of knowledge as well as patience, because you would just do the same thing over and over and over again, not recording, but just, trying to get the sound right.
Yeah.
And, it's crazy because when I heard Bizarre Ride getting made and I didn't understand the concept of like what the engineer like really did in the studio and whatnot, it took kind of like my fascination of being around the making of that album away, because I was just hearing a whole bunch of stuff rewind, you rewind and over and over and over. So in my mind, I was like, well, these are the homies. Somehow they got somebody to give them a gang of money to, come in here and record this album and everything. And then when I heard it finally put together and pieced together, it was just kind of like, oh, I get it now. You know what I'm saying? Like, because prior to that, my exposure was kind of like hearing something done on an 8-track or something like that, which the intent wasn't for it to get bumped in a club or nothing like that. It was more like, okay, you drop something on an 8-track pre-production to get it to somebody to see if you could get the money or get whatever to get into the larger studio. So with that being said, what would you say has been your most iconic studio session?
Oh man.
The one,
could I maybe throw 3 of them out there? How about that? Okay.
I'll take that.
All right. I'm going to, let's see. Let me just process it for a minute. Well, the first time I met Tupac Shakur, that was definitely, an iconic moment that I won't forget. That we were at a studio in New York City, and he was there. He was kind of confined in New York because he was going through a trial situation then. So a buddy of mine, producer named Mo ZMD, Interscope had gotten a hold of one of his like instrumental tapes or whatever, heard some music he was making for another Interscope artist, forwarded it to Pac. Pac found a couple of tracks on there that he really liked. Next thing I know, Mo Z and I are in New York. And we're just sitting there, getting everything set up. And then, in walks Pac with, his guys. Well, we called them Dramacidal at the time, but they wound up being the Outlaws. So face to face, coming face to face with Tupac, at that time, that was definitely an iconic moment and session. And what I learned about him right then was he was the appeal for him was he was the most down to earth, just cool, chill, welcoming, great energy person that you could meet. And that was part of his appeal. Like I always tell people, they ask me, what was he really like? If you came in the room, he's in the room, he had a gift of making you feel like you were the big deal there. You were the one, he didn't play any of that, egotistic stuff or whatever. He was really, really, down to earth and just friendly and just cool. So that was a big moment for me. Another big moment for me was, this is going to kind of go back to the jazz days. All right. And there's a musician producer named George Duke, who unfortunately is, with us in spirit right now. But George Duke was a beast. I mean, arranger, producer, and piano player. He played with Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. Okay. Along with all the, the great iconic jazz musicians of the 70s and 80s and 90s. Just a beast. And just one of those people that I dreamt of working with when I'm sitting there in my basement in South Bend, Indiana. So we were doing a record for a singer named Sue Ann Carwell, who just had a birthday. Happy birthday, Sue Ann. And I think her brother sang with George Duke, and she needed a piano solo on this song. And so she called in a favor, asked George if he would come down and do it. He said yes. So I'm down at the studio, got the song all queued up, waiting and everything, waiting for everybody to arrive, waiting for the producer to arrive, waiting for Sue Ann to arrive, and waiting for George to arrive. Well, George shows up first and everybody else is late. So, I'm just sitting there, talking to George, and, I don't want to be like, too over the top or whatever, but, hey man, it's an honor to meet you, work with you, blah, blah, blah. And after a few minutes, the conversation just kind of really starts slowing down. And, he's looking at me and I'm looking at him, and he's like, so what do you want me to play? What do I want you to play? What are you talking? So without saying I produced or coached, George through this piano solo, it was me and him. I mean, of course, he just played his ass off, and basically the first take, he just nailed it. We might have done a couple other takes. But that was a big moment for me. And then I will never forget my first time working with the Pharcyde.
Hey.
It was a real cool moment because I've been sitting up in the studio all day working on this mix for Running, and I was really trying to, do something special to it. And the only person who was in the studio that day was Lip. And Lip was kind of reclusive. He was just kind of over in the corner, chilling, doing his thing, wasn't really talking or anything. So he's back there just chilling, doing my thing. Maybe about 11 o'clock at night, Brown comes in. And I'm like, okay, well, this is it. And I had kind of taken the record off into a little, different direction, because I figured, based upon what Mike Rosser told me, that, they weren't all the way satisfied with what they'd been getting. I was like, well, let me give them something different. Let me throw some sauce on there. Let me throw a little bit of my, personality on there or whatever. So it was kind of a calculated risk. I was like, they're either going to love it or they're going to hate it. So Brown sits down there in the middle of the, the big speakers, and lights are dim and everything. We go ahead and press play, and the song goes through, and we get to the end of it. And he's just sitting there like this. And then he goes, wow. I said, I think that's a good wow. I think he likes it. I think he likes it. So yeah, he did. But that was a real cool moment for me. And then of course, we made some little adjustments to it. And then Dilla came in, and he sprinkled a little influence on the mix as well. And the rest is history, man.
Is there any lost records that you've made or that you've heard?
Did you say locks?
No, lost, like records, like Lost Time or
lost files, lost tapes.
Yeah.
Ooh. Let me think. I do know this. I get this question a lot from people. There is still catalog. There's still Tupac catalog that the world has not heard yet. There's still
that you heard and you know.
Yeah, I recorded. That I recorded.
In possession of, like,
I'm not in possession of it. No.
Don't put that on me.
I'm about to say. So you mean you dropping the next Tupac album?
No, man. If I only had that kind of nerve, man, that's not my thing, man. Because seriously, I will tell you this, man. You know, as an engineer, when you work with these artists, there's a trust factor, man, that you just cannot violate. You know, I mean, you might violate it one time, but then after that one time you violate it, man, your word spreads real quick. You know, man, that cat, you know, he's a snake or, you know, whatever, man. And you get to see, you know, artists like with their hair down or their hair not on, or you know, you get to see them at their most vulnerable and whatever. So it's really important not to violate, you know, that element of trust that has to exist between an artist and an engineer. So yeah, you know, I've never been one to, like, you know, leak anything or do anything crazy like that.
One of the comment section questions, they asked, how would an artist put their music out back in the day? Because basically, like, you can't, you know, since you couldn't just upload it to the internet, like, how would you blow up, like, you know, like handing out mixtapes or getting on?
Right.
Might be a younger person.
Yeah. Before there were mixtapes, what some guys would do. I mean, there were basically two ways to go about getting your music out there. You could go the major label route if you were, you know, fortunate, you were lucky, you got picked up. Usually it involved, you know, sometimes guys would hit the lotto and send in tapes to a record company, and somebody would listen to it and hear it and then respond, get back to you, and, you know, sign you to a big deal. But most of the time you had to go through a manager or an attorney or somebody like that who already was, you know, in the clique, you know, was connected or whatever. But if you couldn't get it done that way, you could go the independent route, but that would involve you making a big investment in yourself, because again, you couldn't make the music at home. You'd have to go into a studio to do it, and that was expensive. And then you would have to get your own vinyl cut. And so guys would, you know, get a small limited run, a couple hundred albums or singles or whatever it was they were trying to do, and then try to get that in the hands of DJs, you know, in the clubs and everything, because they would go ahead and spin your record, or, you know, maybe if you had a friend relationship with them, or if there's some other influence you could have over them, maybe there was something that they needed and it was something that you had, or, you know, you could broker some kind of situation. You know, they play your record, and then it was all about whether, you know, people responded to it or not. So I think the strategy then was to get something bubbling in your region, you know, doing it independently, to the point where, okay, the club DJs, the party DJs are liking this. The radio stations had to pay attention now. Once the radio stations started paying attention, then you had some clout where you could go to a label and approach them, you know, from a different stance. It's like, hey, we already got a following, you know. It's kind of similar to what you have to do now, but I think it was a little more difficult back then.
You know, speaking on that note, whenever I work with people, man, I just always ask them. I ask them how they make money. I ask them just questions. You know, and I try to get cool enough with them where I'm not being like prodding or whatever, but I'm just like a fiend for knowledge. I try to take it and like apply it to things in my life when applicable, to kind of just use as motivation or whatever. And I remember asking Danger Mouse, because when Danger Mouse came around, and that's crazy, Brown and I've been talking about Dirty Harry the last couple of days or whatever, but when Danger Mouse came around, it was one of those things where he, like, Imani and Brown did a song for him. Apparently the record label wasn't feeling it, but they wanted to keep that song, but get another song for free. And I said that you're not gonna get another song for free. You can pay for another song, but you're not gonna get one for free. And so Danger Mouse left LA, and then he came back and he was like, yo, he gave me a call, and he's like, dude, I got this concept, blah, blah, blah. Can we pull Brown in, blah, 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 blah. And so I wasn't able to be at the session, but we did get together because we have this little Thai restaurant in Koreatown, at our studio in Koreatown. There was a Thai restaurant upstairs. So he came and met me one day, and we were eating, and I was like, when you were here the last time, you were kind of like, couch surfing, trying to make your way or whatever. I'm like, how did you, kind of blow a little bit? But he hadn't gotten the Gorillaz record yet. Like, actually, the song that he did with Brown was his demo for the Gorilla situation to see if he could get it.
Right.
So he told me, for some reason we were talking about Adult Swim, and I said, how did you get hooked up with Adult Swim people? And he was like, oh man, one of the guys who was one of the big dudes at Adult Swim, he went into a record shop in Atlanta and he was thumbing his way through CDs, and he found one of Danger Mouse's CDs, and he called him. He hit him up, and that like was the hook, line, and sinker. And I was like, dang, like how does that happen? You know what I'm saying? Where someone someone of power or stature or whatever goes to a record shop. They're just kind of doing their thumbing through music kind of thing. They find an obscure artist. He was different. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't the regular hip hop producer or whatever producer. He had his own thing going on.
Right.
Then when the dude hits him, it was kind of like an amazing situation because so what he did was he basically, I want to say, I can't remember if it was the record he did with Doom or if it was the record he did with CeeLo, but I know what ended up happening was Adult Swim wanted to license the music. And so they kind of did a thing where they licensed the music, but then Danger Mouse was able to take, I want to say he might have took it to Warner Brothers or somewhere else where he got a budget for, so he did it like in reverse. Like, so he had a project, he was able to license it to a new TV network and get a bunch of his beats and stuff like that playing in between commercials and whatnot. Right. But the way that they did the deal, he was able to take that music and go and get a label situation. So he did it in reverse. And that was just so genius to me, man. Yes, sir. It was so genius. And it was a trip because it made sense to the trajectory of his career. Like after that, like even when we, and I've said it a million times, but I feel it's kind of relevant to what we're speaking. But like, so we were out with the Gorillaz when Crazy was blowing up. And I remember calling him and I'm like, dude, you tripping, man. You need to be out here with us, man. We having a great time. I'm having the greatest time of my life. And he's like, nah, man, I'm working on this thing, man. And it's going to be whatever. And so we ended up, I ended up coming back to Europe with the Pharcyde, and we were in Ireland, and the owner of the club had gotten the advanced copy of Crazy. And I was telling them about I was all excited. I was like, oh man, I met this guy, Danger Mouse. We got Brown on this Gorillaz record that's about to come out, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh, Danger Mouse? He's like, oh man, Danger Mouse has this group with CeeLo. And I think they really got a song, man. They really got a song. Yeah. And I hadn't heard Crazy yet. And then the club owner, he was the owner, promoter, booker, whatever. He played it, and I was like, oh, that's why he's not out here tripping off of us. He's he back here. He got something cracking. Right. And so that was an interesting moment. So when you met Jay Dilla via Pharcyde, were you able to spend time with him where you kind of understood the genius that would come to be, or was it just like you working with another producer and you're just like, okay, I'm working with a producer, and then that producer just ended up popping something off?
Yeah. Okay. So real talk. I was so busy back then, jumping from project to project to project to project to project, man. They all kind of flowed into one another. Okay. I heard the name, but I didn't associate the name necessarily with any particular record or any particular group or anything, So I'd heard his name or whatever, but I would not have been able to tell you specifically what he did or how he did it up till actually, digging into music with Pharcyde. Okay. But the moment I heard it, I was like, oh yeah, this is happening. This is different. And I'll tell you something else that happened kind of interesting. There's a guy out here named Skills, Mad Skills, right up the road in Richmond. I'm in Virginia right now. And Skills did a thing, man, on Instagram a couple months ago where he was digging through some old boxes of cassettes and stuff like that. And he found the beat tape.
That famous tape
that had the beat for Running and the beat for, I think the beat for Drop was on it, or the one of the other records on the album was on this beat tape, man. And he was just playing through it, and it just blew my mind. It really did, man. So
that's the same Mad Skills that did the wrap up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Did, man. Yeah, very, very talented guy. And it's been said that he's ghostwritten for a lot of people. I couldn't say specifically who or whatever.
I can say I'm not gonna say, but I
okay, well,
but some pretty big big rappers in the game.
Yeah, but he's good in his own right, and you can see his wit when he does those wrap up things. But it was cool to hear those beats in the rawest form, like the thing that was the catalyst for those records. I really enjoyed hearing that. But Dilla was on some other kind of stuff. And then after I worked with him, I kind of was able to do a little more research and listening and explore other stuff in his catalog or whatever. And he's definitely one of a kind. Definitely one of a kind, man. Just great, awesome to work with too.
What do you feel like your biggest achievement was?
Man, I'd say my biggest achievement is just longevity at this point. I've been, I think I got my first check, from a label in 1985. So, that's kind of hanging around for a long time. I could use another check from a label right about now, but labels ain't really giving out checks like that anymore, man.
Hey,
man, we didn't realize how good we had it when we had it. I mean, we had it good, but then if you understand record company economics and the way that they structure the deals with the artists and everything like that, everything is definitely like not what it seems. But it's cool to see artists develop other avenues where they can financially exploit their talent and not necessarily have to, accept these kind of deals they had to accept in the past. There's still some lousy ones out there, but it's just interesting how they can. I'll tell you guys real quick, man, what really blows my mind, and understand again, I'm a little bit on in age right now and everything, so I see things are happening right now where the culture has really influenced the mainstream. Like, it blows my mind to see Megan Thee Stallion, hustling Popeye's chicken, man. I just think that's amazing. And what's my girl, Sweetie? Sweetie had a deal, with McDonald's. I'm like, did they not listen to the lyrics?
Hey, they not even tripping.
It's not even a thing now, because what I'm getting at was like, back in my day, I remember like when, the Isley Brothers had a record out, and they had to beep out the, all that bull beep going down. And, it was a big deal when the Beatles said, I get high with a little help from my friends. They were like, oh no, can't play that on the radio, And so, McDonald's is like, the all-American, image, restaurant, whatever, all things, nice and square, whatever. And now, they got Sweetie out there. I'm like, did they not? I guess they don't care, man.
Hey, that's just where we at, Paul, man.
That's where we are.
No rules.
No rules,
what I'm saying?
Man. Yeah.
The nice little 14, 15-year-old girl will have her little soccer, her little basketball shoes at the top of her bag, and at the bottom of her bag it'll be some clinkety clankety stilettos.
Right.
Wait till that Lil Nas X meal come out.
Oh,
it's gonna be the burger on the outside and the bun on the inside. Anyway, a couple of comment questions. People want to know, have you worked with Ninth Wonder?
No.
Okay. And another one is, this is a little personal. I don't know, but somebody said, does he get royalties from the music he's worked on?
That's a great question. I'm glad somebody asked that because like, I'm not really sure, like audience wise, who's watching or who's taking this in, but this is what you need to know. And this is what I should have known. Like, if you would ask me what my biggest regret in music, it's this. There are two sides of the business. There's the side of a linear side, and there's a residual side. Linear side is guys like me who are engineers. Now, one guy who really put me onto the whole game, like in LA, was an engineer named Craig Burbage. He was one of the co-owners of Air LA, where I did that mix with the Pharcyde. And when I first arrived in LA, however many years ago it was, he sat me down. He's like, okay, this is the way it goes. This is what's happening. This is where you want to work. This is who you want to work with, blah, blah, blah. And he broke it down to me. He said, look, you are going to make more money as an engineer than probably 90% of the artists that you work with. I was like, really? Okay. Now back then, as an engineer, you could get a pretty, nice hourly rate and whatnot. And if you were also doing mixes as well as recording, you could command a, good chunk of money to do a mix. But here's what I found out. I tell this story because, I'm not salty about it. It's just a statement of fact. Okay. Sometimes I tell this story and people misinterpret it. I was working with a producer named David Frank, just a brilliant producer. He and a guy named Mike Murphy had a band called The System back in the day. That record, Don't Disturb This Groove or whatever. Just monsters, man. And I was doing some work with Dave. So he had a studio in his house. We're working up there one day and he's like, hey man, can you come up next Thursday? Yeah, man, what's going on? I'm coming up. He said, well, Ron Fair over at A&M just signed this new girl, and Steve Kipner and I wrote a song, and we think it's going to be the first single. So what we want to do is, I've got it over here in Pro Tools or Logic, whatever he's using. We want to transfer it from the computer over on the tape, because we're going to have Dave Way, a real talented mix engineer, do the mix on it. So they want to put it on tape. They could take it down in the studio and do the mix on it. It's like, yeah, no problem, whatever. So I get up there and spend about 10 hours that day doing this transfer. And at the end of the day, Dave says, okay, how long are you here? 10 hours? Okay, we got you at $60 an hour. You wrote me a check for $600. I'm good, right? This is back in, the 90s or whatever, who'd be mad, even now, who'd be mad at a $600, paycheck for the day, right? So I'm like, okay, well, yeah, cool, man. Who's the artist, by the way? Do we cutting vocals? Oh, no. We're going to do the vocals ourselves. She's kind of new to the studio experience or whatever. Whatever, man. Let me know if next week you need me. I come get another $600. All right. So the new artist turned out to be Christina Aguilera. And the record turned out to be Genie in a Bottle. And that record, last time I checked, it sold more than 10 million copies worldwide.
You needed a smooch in your life. Only if I would have been advanced at that time, man. I'm all.
What I'm saying,
I cut that deal for you.
Yeah, but you see, engineers were on the linear side. It's like, how many hours did you work at what rate? $60 an hour, 10 hours, you made $600. Cool. Okay. But whoever wrote the song, whoever produced the song, whoever's got publishing on the song is on the residual side. So now when I'm walking around, in the grocery store and I hear that record, playing on the Muzak or whatever, those guys are all still getting paid. And, I made $600. You figure it out. It's like, you got to be on the residual side of this business. You either got to be a writer, producer, publisher. You got to do something where you're going to get residual income. Even if it's only a couple of cents, per stream or whatever, then you just need a lot of streams. You need, Ed Sheeran type stream numbers or anybody, whatever money is out there, you want to be on the residual side of it and not focus on getting that linear money.
Wow.
So on to the next one. So I probably back in the late 2000s, like maybe like around 2006-ish, maybe around 2006, because we had just gotten to Santa Fe Springs. I had this fascination with Nile Rodgers, and I started listening to these interviews that he would do, and he would say how his basically his guitar. So Fender Stratocaster is like that's his tool. Mm-hmm. And he was saying how like all his guitar licks were basically the same guitar lick, like for Chic, for David Bowie, Let's Dance, for whatever. He would spin it in a different direction, but it was all basically the same thing that he did. And it just translated to all these different artists. And so, me, when I'm at the warehouse, doing my screen printing thing or whatever, I throw YouTube on and just listen to just knowledge or whatever. And so somehow I stumbled across, and Brown would be in his studio, but then he'd take breaks and he'd come out and he'd listen to what I'm listening to in the warehouse, or we just talk for a minute or whatever. And I had pulled up, it was kind of like a conversation that Rod Temperton was having about Quincy Jones, Michael Jackson, Nature. What was the name of that album? Nature.
The song Human Nature.
What was it? What was the name of the song?
Human Nature.
Yeah, Human Nature. Okay. Yeah. And he was talking about the making of all this stuff and how Quincy Jones kind of brought him in. And then I did my own research on him. And then I discovered Heat Wave, and I knew I'd heard the Heat Wave songs, but I had no idea that this white cat from the UK was this funky, this funky creature, super producer and all this. So you've been around the block, you've heard different musicians, you've seen different genres, you've seen different things in the music industry. Who would you choose? Rod Temperton or Nile Rodgers?
What do I need to do at the end of the day? What's my goal?
Make money?
A hit.
It's a toss-up, man. It's a toss-up. I'll say this. That's a toss-up. It really is. Because on one hand, you got Michael, that trumps everything else. That pretty much shuts the conversation down right there. With Nile, man, it's like Nile kind of reformulated David Bowie, with the Let's Dance thing. The twist he put on Madonna, just those two records right there. And then again, going back to, Rapper's Delight, again, I know is, like the mainstream, but that was Nile's groove, man, that those cats are rapping over. That was a Chic record that those guys basically ripped and, did their thing on it.
Oh, wow.
So that's a pretty infectious, groove right there. So I'm not saying the movement wouldn't have happened without Nile Rodgers, but I would say that groove that he put together had a whole lot to do with it. And then, of course, there've been a zillion other records that he's done, that people have sampled. But then there's, Rod Temperton, you got Michael too. But I want to urge everybody, if you go on YouTube and type in Heat Wave and Music Laden, I think it's MUSIKLADEN. There's kind of a variety show that they did over in Germany, but you will see an early version of Heat Wave, and you'll see Rod Temperton over on the organ and keyboards doing his thing. And Johnny Wilder Jr., who was, the lead vocalist and everything, man. They were a tight band, man. They were like really, really good. And the outfits they were wearing, everything, it's kind of funny, but it's some good stuff. I think a lot of people would be entertained by it, but it's just cool to see, like, what Rod Temperton was like before everybody, knew he was who he was destined to be. And may he rest in peace.
Yeah, I know. I had was it either Thriller or Off the Wall, one of the special editions, and they'll like tell you, details about each song or whatever. Yeah. And it was like that was Off the Wall by Ron Tipperton.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That was dope. That's the first time I ever heard his name. It's like they'll have like a little mini like snippet on his thought process behind each song, or each person who helped contribute to the song, what they was thinking when they were making it.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about it is when Michael got his first solo deal, he was on Epic Records. And the only, I may be wrong here slightly, but I think, Epic was a subsidiary of CBS. And I don't think they even had like a black music department at that point. Mm-hmm. And the reason that they had anything at all, like in the urban platform, was because Heatwave was there. Heatwave was signed to Columbia. And if you listen to the harmonies that Rod and Johnny Wilder, one of the lead singers from Heatwave, put together, and then you listen closely to the way that that stage of his career, that the way that Michael structured his harmonies, you'll see a lot of similarities there. So I think there was a lot of kind of cross pollination, and Michael was definitely listening to and being impressed by what Heatwave was doing vocally. Some real good stuff, man. I've seen some stuff on TikTok where I guess they got a hold of some acapellas of Mike, like doing Thriller, or one of the records off the Thriller album, and it's real interesting to hear how tight his harmonies are, and everybody's like, oh man, there wasn't even any auto tune. Nope, no auto tune. Still got it done.
What's the best advice anyone's ever given you?
Let's see. Well, there's one thing I can't share. The best advice anybody's ever given me. Let me think about that for a second. I would say, the best advice anybody ever gave me was one of my instructors in school just really emphasized to me how important it was to. Oh, I'll give you one even better than that. Going back to my friend David Frank, who was the producer for The System, and the guy that put me on the Christina Aguilera record. He was telling me about when he first started working with his equipment. Okay, I'm gonna go a little bit geeky here. I'll try to keep it brief, but his band was called The System, but there was a company that made electronics named Oberheim, and Oberheim put together a system of their machines that you could use, to produce music. They were one of the first companies to put this all together and integrate it. So they had a keyboard, they had a drum machine, and they had a sequencer, which was kind of what would record, what you were doing and make everything sync all together. So Dave told me that when he got this equipment, he basically locked himself in his apartment, for a week or two or whatever, until he learned every single thing that equipment was able to do. Okay. He just, got in, dug in, read the manuals and stuff like that. And I could relate to that because going back to my days when I was first getting started in Boston, and again, this whole hip hop thing is starting to evolve, and the technology is shifting away from tape, and now you've got all these gadgets, you have to be able to plug them in and make them all talk to each other. I knew how to do all that because I studied it. I picked up the manuals. I read the manuals. Of course, there wasn't no YouTube to watch or anything like that back then. But what I'm saying is, if you want an edge, one of the ways that you can find an edge is to know the equipment that you're working with. And I think, Dave really inspired me to, whenever I got a piece of equipment or a new piece of software, like started learning about Pro Tools, I would always think about what he said. And I was like, man, I really want to know everything this equipment or software is capable of. So that made a big impact on me.
Interesting you say that. That's been Brown's story since I've known him. Chasing technology, shutting the world out, learning this piece of technology because it can do something that, I guess, with him being a producer as well as a musician, seeing the potential of what this technology can do kind of fascinates him to where he's like, he'll just like focus in, lock down, tutorial, like whatever it takes.
He loves it. Yep.
To learn this piece of music. So what engineer has shown you the most in a single session?
One single session, who showed me the most? Okay, there was a studio in New York City, right in the middle of Times Square, that was called Unique. And if I had to boil it down to one session, it would be a session that I attended down there at Unique. It was a record that we recorded up in Boston. But this place, Unique, was known for being like the spot to go for to get your hip hop mixes done the right way. And there was a guy down there named Frank Heller, Mr. Frank Heller to everybody else. So, but this cat was phenomenal. And he's the one who was doing like everybody's records, like all the kind of like electro type hip hop stuff, man. He was the king of that. There were a handful of guys that were down there, but Unique had, they had everything, like whatever the drum machine was, or keyboard or equipment or new piece of outboard or whatever. They all was right there on the cutting edge. So when I went down there and finally got to meet Mr. Frank and watch him work and the way he approached things or whatever, I was taking, mental notes as much as I could. And I think that was a pretty impactful, influential session for me. Frank Heller, shout out.
Hey, how'd you end up working with Anita Baker?
Okay, the Anita Baker thing was one of those things, again, I kind of backdoored into it. A good friend of mine, his name is Ray Dixon. I've known Ray for many years, and he and I worked together. He formed a production company down here in Virginia, and he started out primarily doing corporate events and big conventions and conferences and whatever for corporations and things. And little by little started transitioning into doing live events and concert events. And he was one of the first guys in this region to invest in a big LED video system. And I think there was a show that was going on down here at the Hampton Coliseum for Teddy Riley or Guy or somebody. And I knew the promoter. And I think they were in the studio that day. And I just happened to ask him, hey, you promoting that show? Yeah. I was like, do you need video? Do you need a video wall? He's like, yeah, we do. You know somebody who has something? I was like, yeah, my man, right down the street. He's like, oh, yeah, I know him. I didn't even think, man. I was like, man, give him a call. So from that, Ray's company started growing. It's called Elite AV. And his company just really started growing because he does good work and he has good equipment, and he kept investing in his business. And again, learning, his craft. He went from doing lights to audio to video. He can do everything. And as his company started to grow, he started to be approached by these companies that wanted him to go out on tour. And one of them was this production company that was doing Anita Baker's tour. They wanted him to come out and do the video support and, build the big wall for her. So I started driving the truck, man. I started driving the truck from place to place, and helping a little bit with the video setup, but basically just being present. So what would happen sometimes is Anita will just say very, very specific about her sound, both in the audience, but particularly on stage. Like her monitors have to be like just right. And I think while I was out there hanging out with them, they probably went through 5, 6, 7 monitor engineers because nobody could ever get it quite right. And I got to know the guy who was doing the sound or whatever. And I would sit up there with him front of house while the show was going on, because I damn sure didn't want to be the one doing the monitors, because I didn't want to get fired. So I sat up there front of house. And sometimes she would call out during the show to have this guy, come down and try to fix the monitors. And when he had to go down there, that means that, I was just sitting there next front of house. And, one day he looked at me, he's like, can you jump in? I'm like, yeah. He said, don't touch anything. I was like, nah, man. No, I really didn't do it like that. But so I just kind of filled in a time or two, man. But mostly I was just doing, behind the scenes stuff, just there, to help and, do setup, driving, whatever. But we did quite a few shows together, man. That woman can still sing anything she wants to sing.
Wow.
And there was no Pro Tools.
Wow.
There was no trickeration, no backing.
Auto-tune.
None of that.
Overdub.
Matter of fact, she didn't want a wireless microphone. She wanted a microphone with a cord on it. And the console was a big analog Midas console. None of these new digital Digico boards or Avid S6 or anything like that. She wanted the real raw deal. Band up there, 3 background singers, acoustic piano. That's what she wanted to do, and she did it well.
We have 2 questions from the comment section. One, is there any song or artist that you decided not to work with, and they basically that you regret not working with? Drake.
Nah, okay. I'd be happy to work with Drake. I'll tell you this. When Tupac was assassinated, there was a period of time that went by, and I had basically kind of transitioned out of that whole thing. When he went over to death row, that was when I kind of stopped, working with him. And after he was assassinated, they wanted to start putting together some of the posthumous albums, and the first album that came out was Are You Still Down? Remember Me. And at that point, they wanted to kind of go back and reconnect with some of the people, that he had worked with in the past. And they reached out to me. And of course, I was honored, to be a part of that project. But it started stretching out so long. And I remember they had gotten to a situation where it was almost time for the record to drop, and they were still having a problem getting samples cleared. And so now they wanted to go in and start like re-recording and reproducing a lot of the songs without samples. And I think I just kind of got worn out, I still wound up doing probably 6 or 7 songs on that album. But I kind of got worn out, and I kind of just had to politely, step away from it. So I don't regret that. I think it was, it just kind of run its course for me at that point. And I feel like if I'm not bringing the energy I need to bring, to the project, the right thing to do is to just kind of step away. So it wasn't like, there wasn't any animosity or anything like that. I was just like, hey guys, I think I've done about all I can do on this, whatever. So, I had to kind of just go in a different direction at that point.
And the next question is, any advice for songwriters on how to get started?
How to get started as a songwriter?
Write a song, right?
Yeah, write a song. But I would say this. No matter what you want to do what successful people do. First of all, establish in your mind what success means for you. You know what I'm saying? Like for everybody, a picture of success is not selling the most records. Now, I don't know why, because the more records you sell, but I'm saying that's not everybody's goal. And I respect, I respect that. But, I'm a capitalist. I'm like saying this is an industry that generates, zillions of dollars. Go get that money. And then do your side project, later, have your alter ego. Like Prince is a perfect example. Prince's first couple of records were really, really commercial, had lots of hooks, danceable music, everything like that. And then as he got later on into it and established his credibility as an artist, then he could do some more experimental stuff, either on his own or under some of his aliases or some of the other artists that he produced. But I would say study success. So if you want to be a songwriter and you decide that you want to be, you want to write pop songs or songs for the radio or whatever it is, study the ones that are successful, break down what the elements are of it. And I don't want to say copy that, but pattern that.
Mm-hmm.
Dang. That was powerful, Paul. You know, that was kind of powerful. So back to my experience with just different engineers and guys in the far side, and I use the far side experience because that was kind of like my closest and my experience entering the whole music stuff and all that. How do you feel about all these programs, applications, cheat codes, all the stuff that took jobs away from these great Pro Tools engineers like yourself that would come in and make it work? How do you feel about these cheat codes, these halfways, these like all that type of technology, the technology?
Yeah. I mean, there's a famous business book that I think everybody should read. It'd take you about an hour to read it at the most. It's called Who Moved My Cheese?
I read it.
And the motto at the end of the day is you got to move with the cheese. If everybody is over here doing things, you know, a certain way or whatever, you can't keep going back to where the cheese used to be and ask, who moved my cheese? This isn't fair. You know, you got to either move with the cheese or you got to find something else to do. Yeah. So, you know, speaking personally for me, it's kind of a weird thing. But you got to make the shift. You got to make the adjustment. Real quick, this project I'm working out in LA. There are a number of really good, seasoned, veteran studio musicians who are playing on the album. And when the artist told me that these people were going to be participating in it, I was still momentarily kind of stuck in the old paradigm. So I'm thinking I'm going to show up after the studio and my man's going to walk in with his guitar and his amp and is going to sit down and we're going to, you know, record. Nah, man, he emailed them joints in. You know, he did them from his house. He emailed them in. We had a flute solo on the song. My man did it at his house, emailed it in, you know. So it's all kind of, you know, put together that way. And that's fine. You know, it's much more convenient. You don't have to deal with LA traffic and everything like that. But it's definitely taken like some of the soul out of it and some of the interaction that you have, you know, dealing with the musician face to face, like, yeah, I really like the way you did that. But, you know, could you just do this instead or whatever? You know, you lose that immediacy of the interaction. And that used to be a lot of fun for me. But, you know, the way it is now, we ain't going backwards. And you have to figure out a way to make it work and embrace, you know, the new way of doing things. And, you know, appreciate, it's bad for studio owners, but appreciate that you don't have to walk into a multi-million-dollar studio in order to, you know, create a hit record. I mean, the benchmark everybody, you know, talks about lately over the last couple of years was that Billie Eilish record. It was basically done by her and her brother literally in the bedroom, you know. Now it was mixed somewhere else by, you know, like a bona fide mix engineer, but they record, and, you know, it won the Grammy for best engineered record, you know, not just all the other Grammys she got for the performance, but for the technical side, best engineered record for a record that she did in her bedroom, you know, with Logic, a little set Yamaha speakers, an affordable Neumann microphone, and you know, some very, very creative producer. So, you know, we ain't going back, man. We ain't going back. You better get with the program. I can't hate, man. You know,
it's good for you, man.
I can't hate, but yeah, it's a challenge, man. You know, it's definitely a challenge, but we ain't going back. So you got to roll with it. You got to move with the cheese. Everybody get that book. I'm dropping. I've been doing this a long time, y'all. I'm trying to drop a little nugget here and there.
The people in the comments actually follow along. They is like, yo, he's just dropping jewels in there, you know, especially with the royalties and stuff. So yeah, they really with you.
I'm glad. I'm really glad. I hope they would get something out of it like that. That makes it feel good.
What were your thoughts on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees yesterday?
Here's another good one. Because who was the first kind of non-traditional inductee to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Run DMC?
I'd go with that, but I'd also go with Tupac.
Oh, Tupac, really?
Yeah,
Wow,
so I'm all about that. But I don't think you need to split hairs about what's rock and roll. And I saw a thread on, I don't know, Facebook or someplace where guys are going back and forth about whether rap music, why isn't there a rap Hall of Fame or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
But it's all, to me, semantics. We know what the Rock and Roll, at least I feel I know what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame should be all about. And it should be about popular music. And right now there's so many cross collaborations and things like that between all styles, all genres of music. I think it all belongs in there. So I think it's awesome to see a variety of people, a variety of artists go into the Hall of Fame, and Jay has definitely earned his place.
Mm-hmm.
To your note, Paul, I'll say we deserve that Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because when you got these country singers using trap beats,
right,
and hip and rap cadences to this country music, it's kind of like it's all a hybrid, and that's popular music.
It's all, that's right. That's really what it would have been. That it's just in a name. It should be the Popular Music Hall of Fame,
mm-hmm.
but at the time they just call it the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So again, deal with it.
Was it ever intended to be exclusive, or was it like so. Just? You said you don't think so?
I think it was just the name. I don't think they were trying to exclude anybody particularly. Of course, you're going to have a certain element of people that want to exclude certain elements of culture, whatever. But that goes across the board. That ain't nothing new.
Yeah, I say keep the name. Just take it out of Cleveland.
That.
I'm kidding.
So, Paul, if you could have your dream verses, dead or alive, who would it be?
Ooh, man. I mean, would it be Biggie and Tupac?
Okay.
All right. I can take a slice of that.
That'd be worth watching. Okay.
And, I know you're biased, but who you got?
I got rolled, my man, but still. So look, like I said, I'm keeping it real with you guys. I want to keep it real with everybody out there. I did the first, and I don't know if there was a second collaboration between Biggie and Tupac, a record called Running from the Police.
Okay.
Had no idea what I was dealing with. Had no idea who I was dealing with. Didn't know. I was there to do a job. It was a remix. Biggie wasn't there, Pac wasn't there, but we took this stuff that they had done and put a little twist on it, whatever, and the rest is history.
That was before. Was that before Pharcyde?
Right around the same time.
Okay, because one of the things that kind of impressed me about you, not only did you know your craft, but you were very comfortable in the element of the various personalities kind of flowing around, because you got to be that too. You know what I'm saying? You have to know what you do, but you also, as an engineer, have to work well with the different personalities of the musicians that are floating in and floating in, because that world of creative process is just a lot, man. It's just a lot.
I'll share some thoughts about that too. Again, you're dealing with a kid from the Midwest, right? Okay. I have a certain way I look, whatever. I have a certain way I talk, whatever. I stayed true to who I was. I did not try to code switch or anything like that.
Be a gangster.
Right, because it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work. That's just not who I was. And there was no need for me to try to give off an impression of me being somebody other than who I was. But I was confident. Because, again, going back, I knew what I was doing. And I felt like I was good at what I did. And I knew I was there to bring that energy that those guys needed to do everything in my power to make them comfortable and not have to think about the technology, where they could just go out and perform, where they could sit there in the studio and write, or, you know, whatever it was. I wanted to be like kind of invisible to that whole thing. I wasn't there to, like, you know, I didn't want to be part of the crew. I didn't want to go with them anywhere after we finished working. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to be in there. Yeah, I wanted to be in there to make the record, you know, to put in the work. And I think most of them respected that. You know, they saw that, they knew that. I know Pac felt this way because he spoke on it. You know, he was like, don't let anybody else fuck around with any of my music, you know, while I'm gone. You know, Paul, they trusted me. Interscope, they trusted me, you know, because they knew I was there about business. You know, I wasn't there for anything else outside of what was going on in terms of getting that record done and making it the best it could be. So, you know, I wasn't a fanboy. You know, I wasn't, you know, trying to be down, you know, any of that kind of stuff, man. I just, you know, was who I was, but I was confident in my ability. I knew that, you know, I really felt like I was the only person at that given time that, like, deserved to be there in that seat doing that job. Now, that may have been arrogant of me at the time, but that was the mindset I had to have in order to do that. So when you feel that way, you're confident about what it is you're doing, then some of those, you know, those elements, different personalities or whatever, you know, you can kind of let some of that stuff just deflect. But again, I think most people who were there, the creative people that were there, recognized my dedication to their work, and they appreciated that. And I think, you know, they respected me for that.
Can we get this Tupac lost tapes that you holding on to?
I'm not holding on to any lost tapes.
Hey, man.
He would have wanted it.
Hey, man, Paul might be holding on to some Pharcyde lost tapes.
You got some Pharcyde lost tapes?
What? Hey, man, Paul has been the fly on the wall. I've seen it. I've seen it. The fly on the wall.
Yeah,
you can press a button, man. That's crazy.
See, but you got to forget a lot of that stuff. You know, you really have to forget a lot of the stuff that you, or even better than forgetting it is not hearing it. So again, being in the studio, there's a lot of stuff going on. Tunnel vision. I'm focused right here in between these speakers.
Check.
I don't know what's going on over there, but I'm right here.
The check.
Yeah.
So, oh, go ahead, Jerry.
No, go ahead. That's fine.
So, what do you miss most about times before the whole Corona pandemic?
Oh man, I mean, I definitely miss, you know, just being able to hang out with people and you know, do work with people face to face, even though the pandemic notwithstanding, you know, the industry was transitioning into a situation where, you know, we're not working together where we used to, but doing those live events, you know, that all got obviously, you know, shut all the way down when Corona hit. So, you know, it's starting to ramp back up. As a matter of fact, my man who, you know, I was telling you about, Ray Dixon, who's doing the Anita Baker thing, he's out with the Millennium Tour right now, and they're about halfway through their tour, you know, going all over the country, doing real well. I didn't go on that one, but it's still nothing like having an arena full of people, you know, this amped and just they're ready, you know, to participate in a show with, you know, an artist they really like. So I'm happy that things are kind of getting back. But that doesn't mean drop your guard, everybody. I mean, I dropped my guard for a split second. I got hit, man. So matter of fact, I don't know what I'm doing right now, dude, man. My bad, man.
You good, man? You good?
We all right, man? You could have told me.
You good, man? You good?
You sure?
Good?
Okay, man.
Yeah. Hey, since we doing it, yeah, you might as well.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I had it, man. I you know, I had my vaccine and everything, man, and I got a little bit lazy with wearing the mask, and somebody came up in the studio, I believe, and you know, next thing you know, I got hit.
Dang.
So you know, it ain't over yet, y'all.
It's still out here, yeah.
Yeah, it's still out here. But little by little, I'm glad, you know, to see. There's nothing like, you know, a live event, live music, man, is just, you know, the best thing. And again, one we were talking about special moments, man. I saw, help me out, Greg. There was a club in Hollywood on the corner of Hollywood Boulevard and I think Sycamore. It was a movie theater at one point. It's like right down from the Chinese theater. Was it the knitting club, knitting factory or something like
knitting
that?
Factory.
Knitting factory.
It was so real quick. The knitting factory was supposed to be a smaller version of the House of Blues style kind of club venues that they were kind of doing. It didn't last, but it was a great concept. Go ahead.
Well, I didn't get out much, man. But one night I went down there to see a live show by the Pharcyde. Okay. And the way the Pharcyde brought it, man, they had, and I forget everybody's names. I can't remember if Walk was there or not, but there was a drummer, there was a keyboard player. Yeah, Bert.
Real quick, shout out to Bert. He does a security detail for Billie Eilish.
There you go. Man, that show was hitting. Man. Them boys hit so hard. It was funky, man. Just that live energy, and the crowd was just like, they were just so ready, man. When the guys came out and hit the stage, man, it was just like one of those moments where you're like, wow, this is just so powerful, man. I'll never forget that show, man. That was a really, really good experience for me, man. Loved it. They did a great show and still do. I haven't seen them in a while, but they came to Virginia Beach some years ago, man. I got to see them, and they still brought that same energy, man. I loved it. Loved it, man. Have they been able to get back out on the road?
Nah, just trying to figure it out. Things have just changed so much for that kind of hip hop, and it's tricky. So I talk to people at Live Nation. I talk to people at Golden Voice, and the year that everybody's kind of looking for, which I knew this like a year and a half ago, but like 2022, 2023 is when people are looking to just kind of like go buck wild again. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like really just like kind of go hard. But there are people out doing shows, but they're really kind of, they're still trying to figure a lot of stuff out. You know what I'm saying? On the liability side of it. And they've had festivals, but you notice they had a bunch of festivals in Florida and all that kind of stuff, but all that stuff kind of died down. Because, of course they didn't publicize, how many people got sick or what the, what the thing was after that. But I'll tell you the most creative version of watching live performances that I saw. I believe they did it in Las Vegas, but I know for a fact they did it in Florida. There was a hotel where they rented out rooms or suites facing where the band was playing. Yeah. And people weren't actually like down with the band, but they were like in the hotel. They like rented out the room kind of thing. And I thought that was kind of cool. But at the same time, it's like, everyone doesn't want to go and hang with your friends. You want to go and mix and mingle and, do all that. So on top of the technology like Twitch and the club quarantines with D Nice and all these innovations that have come with, that have been spawned from the coronavirus, I feel that we've yet to see the technology that's about to jump off, but I know there's a lot of people that are probably getting paid a lot of money in some little rooms to figure some stuff out that we'll probably learn in the next year to year and a half. It's going to blow our minds.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. Definitely. I look forward to seeing the guys out there again. I know they're so popular overseas as well. And I know it's been a little tricky, getting over to Europe and everything. 1 week you can go over there, the next week you can, and everything. So I know it's got to be tough, man. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So with that, I will break it down to the last question.
Okay.
It ties into what we were just talking about.
All right.
What do you see the progression of social interaction in the next few years to come?
Define social interaction.
Going Friday night, just got paid. Going to see whoever your favorite artist is, meeting your homeboys down to have a brew, where the favorite artist is, and going back to a time that's maybe 2000, early 2019.
So the times when I've been out, like what I was kind of feeling was how do I say this? I don't know how to really describe it the way that I vision it, but we were kind of coming to a point where, like, if you were going to see a show or a concert or whatever, it was almost like the audience was a necessary and integral part of the performance. Yeah, okay, well, that's nothing new. But I think even more so now, because you have so many cameras everywhere. You know, you got cameras in the audience, but you got cameras of the audience. You got, in this angle over here and this angle over here. And the audience is on, the artist is on stage doing his or her thing or whatever. There's a camera back here catching the audience reaction, in real time and everything to what's going on. So it's almost like the audience isn't actually one with the artist, but they're a whole lot closer to being one with the artist than they were. And so when you couple that now with, the immediacy of, just being able to capture something on your phone and stream it out to all your friends or stream it out, anywhere, it's kind of like a virtual world, but it's still dependent on the live element. It's kind of like a marriage between the two things. So, you can go global instantly, something that, could be really impactful. Like if other people were feeling the energy of that Pharcyde concert that I went to, at the Knitting Factory, like if we were able to broadcast that immediately, and people, because of the detailed way that we can capture all the angles of the show and the performance and everything, in real time, I just think that that's going to make a big difference in the way that people experience things. And, if you can't get there, or it's too far away, or it's too expensive, whatever, you can still participate, in the movement that's going on. And I think again, going back to what we said before, you got to embrace it, because we're not going back the other way. It's just definitely never rolling back. So once we kind of get this thing figured out in terms of being able to protect one another, not get each other sick, we can get out there and just be a little bit closer together. That's going to be cool. But I think it's awesome that we've all learned how to do this other virtual stuff and take advantage of the technology. Even doing something like this, man, this is awesome. I was talking with a buddy of mine who works for Fox Sports, and one great day in my life was they were doing a football game, and he allowed me to come down and watch the whole production come together and sit in the truck and watch the audio guy mix the game, and then over in the other truck the producer and the director, they're doing their thing or whatever. But he says even that now is going to a thing where, like, they are not going to need all these people on site because of the connectivity that's possible now, using fiber optics and stuff like that. They can get it almost literal real time. So I could be sitting here in my studio, potentially mixing the audio for a football game that's taking place up in Seattle. That day is going to come. But already they've got guys that will switch, do the switching for live programs, do the video switching off-site, not being there in a truck, So that's fascinating to me, man. That's fascinating to me. I it gives me goosebumps to think about, what the young people are going to be doing when they get to be my age. The potential is just amazing.
Well, no, man, I really appreciate this, Paul, man. I mean, you're one of, man, I always throw up the bat signal and you always hit me right back, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, happy to do it, man. And you put me on to Nando's. So I always got to
sound about right.
Oh man. Once I had some Nando's chicken, I was like, yo, what is this, man? Every time I get to DC, I got to go have some Nando's, man. But I'll visit when I get back out there, man. I'm headed back to the West Coast tomorrow. So I'm gonna dig you guys up, man. We can wherever it is, the cool spot to eat out there, we can get together, man. Have a socially distant lunch.
Yeah, proper meal. Nah, don't even worry about it, man. You ain't said that. You said food. You understand me?
Yeah. And again, shout out to all the people out there that happen to tune in, man. I appreciate y'all, spend some time with me, and I really hope that it was beneficial to you in some kind of way. I'm old, man, so I'm on Facebook, man. Anybody wants to hit me up on Facebook. Facebook was this program or this social media platform that people used to use 20 years ago. For those of you who don't know what Facebook is, but I'm happy anybody reaches out to me, man. I will, reach back, and if there's anything I can do for anybody.
And Paul's a trooper, man. He's just getting over the little sickness and whatnot. And he was hanging in there, and I kind of felt bad. I hit him up, and I was like, "Man, you sure?" And he's like, "Oh man, I'd love to." And I was just like, "Oh man, I don't want to."
Hey, you know what I'm saying? That's because I got the vaccine. Because somebody else who was around me at the same time did not get the vaccine and wound up in the hospital. No. Get vaccinated. Don't play with this thing, man. It's not a game.
Also. Good.
And you, Jeremy, what's up with you, man? You got anything you want to shout out? You got any shows coming up?
I'm at the Comedy Store tomorrow, and this place called Prohibition Comedy. You can find it on my Instagram. I'm also almost at the Comedy Store on Saturday. No, so Friday.
You're at the Comedy Store Wednesday?
Yep.
Oh, my man's the DJ up there, man.
Who?
He's isn't Wednesday night the
Tuesday?
I don't want to say. Oh, it's on Tuesday night.
The Rose Battle?
No, I think he does Wednesdays. I have to check.
What's his name?
Well, I know him as Tony. I don't know what his DJ, moniker is.
DJ. We have to talk. Yeah, I forgot. But they have a Rose Battle. Dang. Yeah, I can't think right now. But yeah,
I'll put everybody together. You know what I'm saying?
Do that. That's what you do, man. You're the plug man. Yeah.
We get it all figured out. Well, no, man. Thanks everybody. This has been a good one, man. I actually, man, I had a lot more questions, man. But shoot, man, it's rare that I talk to people that have the relationship that I have with Paul. So it's like, man, we could talk for we're interviewing, but then there's just so much and just so far we could take it. But this has been another episode of Splendid Radio on PharcydeTV. Thank you